Good afternoon. I'm Cadet Lieutenant Colonel Harrison Haywood, and I am a member of the Renegade Battalion at Cass Technical High School. I am the executive officer for the Renegade Battalion, and I also serve as the G3 for the Cadet Corps staff for the Detroit Public Schools Community District. Today, I am joined by Cadet Lieutenant Colonel JROTC, Cadet Sergeant Tyra Boyer, Cadet Sergeant First Class Jalen Bradley, and Cadet Colonel Serenity Crenshaw. We have asked members of the Michigan National Guard to join us in this virtual setting so that we may interview them to gain insight on their backgrounds, their past experiences, and the paths they've taken to reach the positions that they are currently in. Today, our guest is Lieutenant Colonel Donald Davenport from the Air National Guard. Welcome and thank you for joining us today, Colonel Davenport.
Thank you so much for having me. It is definitely an honor to be here with you today. I just want to say that, seeing you all and hearing your cadet ranks brings back so many memories for me, as I too am a graduate of, at the time, Detroit Public Schools, now Detroit Public Community Schools, and in the Air Force Junior ROTC program at Benjamin Oliver Davis Jr. Aerospace Technical High School. So thank you for having me. I'm so honored to be here with you all.
Thank you. Before we begin the interview officially, could you give us a brief introduction about yourself and what it is you do within the Air National Guard?
Yes, of course. Like I said, I graduated from Davis Aerospace Technical High School in 1996. There I learned how to fly airplanes. I developed a passion for the military with my Air Force Junior ROTC career there, and I learned how to fly airplanes there. I grew up on the west side of Detroit, 48227 zip code. From Davis Aerospace, I went to Western Michigan University and took on studying aviation flight science. I was fortunate enough after graduating from Western to be hired by the Michigan Air National Guard at Selfridge to fly C-130s. So I was able to spend a lot of time transporting Army troops and airdrops and things of that nature. So I was hired by them. I went to pilot training and flew C-130s with the Michigan Air National Guard for 2 years, a little over 2 years. And then we had a base reallocation come down, and then we switched from C-130s here at Selfridge to KC-135s. The KC-135 is an aerial refueler. So I learned to fly that airplane, and I've been there since flying that airplane since about 2007. Most currently, my current position, I am a squadron commander with the Aircraft Maintenance Squadron, the 191st Aircraft Maintenance Squadron. Our primary role is to provide, aircraft to support all of our missions, whether they are our state partnership missions, our training missions for air crew, our contingency missions for operational taskings. We have 8 KC-135s that we maintain here at Selfridge. And I have the honor of leading a 62 personnel squadron of crew chiefs. So it's a little bit different from the operations side of the house, as I'm able to spend some time with maintainers and learn how, how they maintain these wonderful airplanes that we fly. Interesting fact, our airplanes at Selfridge, some of our oldest ones are 1958 model airplanes. So our wonderful airmen, our wonderful troops, they take great care of these aircraft, and it's an honor to serve them.
Thank you. And so you mentioned being in the JROTC program at your high school. How has that impacted your decision to go into the military? And then how would you say that prepared you or just kind of set up your experience for the military?
Yes, absolutely. So I will say being in the JROTC program, either changed my life steered my life in the direction. It definitely enabled me to be here where I am today. I owe a lot of everything that I am, as an officer, as a leader, I consider myself to be a leader, a mentor, just my love for the military, esprit de corps, customs and courtesies, drill and ceremony, all of that I hold, high value. I got it all from 9th through 12th grade, and junior ROTC program at Davis Aerospace, Detroit Public Schools. I owe a lot of who I am today, as an officer, as a pilot, as a commander of a maintenance squadron, to the principles and things that I've learned during the junior ROTC program. I learned how to tie a tie from being in the junior ROTC program. And I tie my tie the same way when I put on my blues, and I learned that. I learned how to shine shoes from being in the Air Force Junior ROTC program. And, to this day, if I have a pair of dress shoes that's got some scuffs on it, I know how to go get a can of kiwi and some cotton balls and take care of that. So, ROTC, the junior ROTC program definitely prepared me for life, being an adult, and definitely for the military.
Thank you. I feel the same way about the program, and I understand exactly what you explained. My second question for you is, what has been your most memorable experience within the National Guard? Just something that just comes to mind automatically when you think about the Guard.
Yes, there are so many. I mean, there are so many experiences that I can turn to. But one particular that, as soon as you asked the question, the one that immediately popped to mind is being a lieutenant flying the C-130 aircraft in Colombia, flying around those tall 18,000-foot mountains and landing in the jungles of Colombia on, improvised runways. I can remember climbing up a ladder to give a controller my flight plan. One of the other things that was significant about spending that time was riding around Colombia in bulletproof vehicles. It reminded me of, there's a movie out, it was an actor by the name of Harrison Ford, Clear and Present Danger, where they're riding around in bulletproof vehicles. And I'm like, I kind of lived that, as a young lieutenant, doing an operation in Colombia.
Thank you. And so my final question for you is, has there ever been a time where you questioned your place in the military or felt like you didn't belong? And has anyone ever questioned your authority or a command that you gave because of your ethnicity? Or have you faced discrimination within the Guard? So it's kind of a series of questions. But
wow, you really put some thought in that question. And I tell you what, it's one that every single day, you think about it. You're not challenged every day, but there's always that chance. So to start with, do I belong? Have I ever questioned my belonging? I would say absolutely. I would say there were times, not necessarily associated with being Black, but there were times where I may have had struggles learning a certain maneuver in the airplane or a certain task where I kind of really needed to dig deep. And that the flesh, or that there's a part of you that'll say, oh, want to give up, but you really got to just push through it. Just like when you're running the PFT, the physical fitness test or something like that, your mind tells you, or your body's like initially like, oh, let's stop. But as soon as you stop, then the pain's over. But if you press through and finish, then the pain will also be over. So why quit? So yeah, there has been times where I've been challenged, you know, for various reasons where you're like, do I belong? But then I always go back and I look at the Tuskegee Airmen. I look at those who have paved the way for me and the things that they've endured. And you know, or just in any career field that you can pick, you know, those who have gone before us and the things that they had to you know, deal with in order so for us to be where we are. And then you just kind of got to press on. Um, People who have, you know, times where my authority or position has been questioned because of my ethnicity. Absolutely. You know, I can remember one example where I landed at a base. I was the aircraft commander on the flight. I had a brand new lieutenant who just kind of learned how to fly the airplane with me. And we land, and then somebody comes on the airplane, and you know, they see a black man and a Caucasian man. The first thing they do, they turn to the Caucasian man who happens to be the lieutenant and says, "Oh, where should I put this equipment, or what do I need to do with this?" And then he just kind of looked at me, and I didn't say anything. I just stood there, and the young lieutenant looked at me and looked at the guy and said, "You want to talk to him?" And I said, "Hi, how's it going? Good to see you." Know. So there are times where you will be questioned. You know, there are times where people may have an opinion about you based on your skin color or how the media portrays you because you're from Detroit. I've been to places and they say, "Oh, Detroit," and I'm like, you know, yes, I'm from Detroit proudly. What's it like? It's wonderful. I'm thankful for my Detroit upbringing because it helps me to, you know, survive the things of the world. But anyway, there will be times when you will be questioned, but you really have to stand on your your integrity. You have to stand on what got you there in the first place, your training, your knowledge. Um, you know, it's up to you to ensure that you study so you can, you know, as the Bible says, study to show yourself approved. It's up to you to study the material to know what it is that you're talking to. So when you give a direction, you understand. You got to understand the risks associated with the direction that you give. You know, the benefits, the consequences. You kind of got to factor in all of those. And if it's something that's directly from the regulation, you have to be able to stand on that. You will be questioned sometimes daily, but you really kind of got to be confident in who you are and what got you there in the first place, and go from there. Does that answer the question?
Yes, it did. It was an excellent answer. Thank you. I appreciate that. So those are all the questions that I have for you, and I will now be followed by Cadet Lieutenant Colonel JROTC.
Thank you, Cadet Lieutenant Colonel.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Colonel Davenport. I'm Cadet Lieutenant Colonel Kasim, and I currently serve as the Cadet Chief of Staff for the Cadet Corps staff, as well as Command Sergeant Major for the Renaissance Cougar Battalion. So, with my first question being, did you initially intend on staying, and if not, what were your original plans for the National Guard?
I think I got the majority of that question. It was a little choppy. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Would you mind repeating the question?
Okay, I was asking you, did you initially intend on staying in the National Guard long term? And if so, why did you make that?
Okay, that's a great question. Did I intend on staying in the National Guard long term? If so, why did I make that decision?
But if not, what were your original plans?
What were my original plans? Initially, I thought that I was going to go into the military, learn to fly in the military, I was already a private pilot. I had a commercial instrument multi-engine rating leaving college, and my goal was to go right to the airlines. I was going to go in the military for a little bit and go in airlines. But the more time I spent doing the mission in the Michigan National Guard, the more I not only grew accustomed to doing it, appreciated, respected it, loved it, and I've decided since then, I've joined the AGR program, and I've decided since then to make it a career, and do 20 years, and I'm approaching I'm pretty much at my 20th year in the Guard this year, but about 4 or 5 years away from 20 years of active duty from the AGR program. It's a family. It's a family. You get to serve. Thankfully, we were able to serve in our own community where we live or where we grew up. That's a huge plus. As guardsmen, that also weighs in on that decision. But then you serve with fellow airmen, soldiers for years. So you get to learn them. You all grow together. You get an opportunity to have mentors or mentor others. And it's not something that you just do for a few years and then leave and then you don't see that person again. So the life experiences, the training, all of that has contributed to my decision to make this a career.
Thank you. And for my second question, I wanted to ask you, how did your family react when you decided to join the military?
How did my family react? My family was very understanding. Again, I was in junior ROTC for 4 years in high school. So they got used to seeing me in uniform at least once a week on every Wednesdays when we wear our we call it blues. And so did my neighborhood. And I can remember walking to the Grand River bus stop with my uniform on in the wintertime. I know how that feels when you stand, you got your all-weather coat on and you're standing at the bus stop waiting on the bus. I've been there. So I've endured that. So it was kind of a given for my family. They accepted it. It was a great decision. I to this day, I don't regret it. I would do it all over again. I think what I would do differently though, I would have joined the military prior to graduating college. So I would have joined sooner so that I can get that, the opportunity to utilize some of those educational benefits that the Guard provides, that experience, that great time in service, different things like that. I would have taken advantage of that. That's the one thing I would have done differently.
Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you. And for my final question, I wanted to ask you if the military is still as exciting as it was when you initially joined. And if so, what's keeping you interested in the National Guard? If not, what has changed over the years?
So that's an easy one there. Is it still exciting? It is, but for different reasons. It's still exciting, but I'm in a different place. When I joined, I was young, in my opinion, younger, single, and it was just me. And I was able to travel the world and do what I wanted to do, obviously in accordance with, established guidance. I was able to do all of the fun, how they say, join the military, travel the world, see the sights, I did all of that. That was great. Now married with 3 children, 4, 6, and 8, it looks a little different. So it's a little more challenging in terms of when I'm called away from home. It's still exciting, but there's additional challenges that come with being, I guess you can say, an adult, a grown up, So I'm staying because, the military has given me so many opportunities. I don't take a single one for granted. I'm in a position now where I'm able to help, servicemen grow. I'm able to contribute to the lives of others, to the mission, more strategically. When I was younger, it was a lot about, it was more of a read a step, do a step. You tell me to do something, I'm going to go do it. Now it's more leadership, more, directing, more interpreting regulations. So I would say it's challenging because I'm more people oriented now because I'm dealing with the lives of 62 other airmen. I have a part in that. It's a blessing. I wouldn't trade it for the world. So it's a different kind of excitement. If that answers the question.
Thank you. It does. Those are all the questions I have for you today.
Thank you, Cadet Lieutenant Colonel.
Yes, thank you, Cadet Lieutenant Colonel Kasum, and he will now be followed by Cadet Sergeant Tyra Boyer.
Hi, Lieutenant Colonel Davenport. My name is Cadet Sergeant Tyra Boyer, and I'm currently the S3 at Renaissance High School. And I have 3 questions for you today. My first question, you kind of already answered, but I'm going to ask the second part. It was, are you married and do you have any children? And how do your family affect your career and vice versa?
Yes, thank you, Cadet Sergeant. Yes, I am married. My beautiful wife, Reagan. We have 3 wonderful children, ages 4, Elise, 6, Devin, and 8, Dylan. So our household is full of excitement and you name it, Legos and everything. So it's awesome. As a member of the National Guard, as a serviceman, you depend heavily on family support. We have a saying in the military that your family sacrifices more than you as a serviceman, and that is 100% true. My wife, she helps me make decisions on stuff all the time. She helps me, even if it's as simple as I'm drafting an email, and I say, how does this sound? And I'll tell her what the email says, and she's like, you're not going to send that, are you? And I'll have to delete it all the way, and then she'll help me to kind of communicate better, I'll say. So just a lot of things. My family and I, we're preparing for a move for a professional military education Air War College this summer. So that's going to be huge for us, as we've never gone for a long period of time together as a family. So I'm depending greatly on their support. So you really need to, as a military member, you really kind of gotta, be thankful for your family, and thankfully we have ways to continue to support families. It's huge. It's essential to who we are and our ability to perform our mission.
Thank you. My second question is, have you ever been in a combat zone? If so, what was your job and what did it entail? If not, have you ever been deployed or stationed anywhere?
Yes, thank you. I have been in a combat zone multiple times. My job in the combat zone for the most part has always, mostly been as a pilot, as air crew. I've been to Afghanistan, pretty much that area of operation as a C-130 pilot, where we supported cargo operations. We did airdrops. We landed and did troop movement, multiple things of that nature, and also as a KC-135 pilot, where we provide aerial refueling to those aircraft that are supporting the war effort. A lot of fighter aircraft and close air support aircraft that are supporting troops in contact in harm's way. So primarily my job has either been, as a pilot flying those missions myself, or as a pilot. I've been to a deployed location, the Pacific. I wouldn't not necessarily in combat, but as the director of operations. So kind of running the air operations on the ground, while our air crew would fly the missions and things of that nature. So multiple opportunities to deploy.
Thank you for that. My last question is, what were your expectations before joining the military, and were they met? If not, how so?
That's a good question. My expectations. So again, JROTC helped me a lot, because I had an opportunity to, I spent some time at the summer camp at Fort Custer. That was helpful because I got to see, as a kid, I got to see drill instructors or other soldiers and airmen, were mainly soldiers who were in the military, and just so how we would sing jodies and march and see what a barracks is like and all of that. So that was helpful. When I got to college, I had an opportunity I was blessed with an opportunity to work for the Michigan Youth Challenge Academy. I was a cadre there for the initial class there. So I was working with many guardsmen, Army, a couple air, but mostly Army, who were in the military, working with those cadets there. So I kind of knew a little bit about what to expect, but not really. You don't really know until you're there. I grew up watching Top Gun and Iron Eagle and all of that, and it was definitely cool, but did I think that would be my life, in the Air Force? No, I knew it was a movie. It's show business. So you show up and you pretty much just go with the flow. You take it day by day. People there's a saying that goes, how do you eat an elephant? And people say, one bite at a time. That's kind of how you got to take your military experience career, one bite at a time. It's a day-to-day situation. You take it day to day. You survive the day, then you just gear up, ready to go for the next day. You survive that day, gear up, ready to go for the next day. And I found that I've been more successful when I don't have preconceived notions or what I don't really know to expect. Prepare. If there's curriculum of things you need to study, you got to do that. I've been more successful having prepared first to learn some things ahead of time. But when it comes down to the expectations, you just kind of got to take it day by day.
Thank you. Those are all my questions.
Thank you, Cadet Sergeant.
Thank you, Cadet Sergeant Boyer, and she will now be followed by Cadet Sergeant First Class Jalen Bradley.
Good afternoon, Lieutenant Colonel Davenport. So I'm Cadet Sergeant First Class Bradley, and I have a couple questions for you today.
Good afternoon.
So my first one is, what exactly made you join the Air National Guard, and did you ever look into any other branches or no?
Great question. Air National Guard. When I was a young child, I would always stand at attention on Memorial Day when they would lay the wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier. It was something about the military that kind of always intrigued me. I used to try to pretend that I would parachute from my top bunk. So I always had a love for the Army. I've had some. My father was in the Army. There's some family members in the Army. And then I enrolled into General Benjamin Oliver Davis Jr. Aerospace Technical High School. I always got to say General Benjamin Oliver Davis Jr. For those of you who may or may not know who he is, he was the commander of the 332nd Fighter Group, Tuskegee Airmen. So I had the honor of attending high school there, where several of the documented original Tuskegee Airmen spent time just walking the halls, mentoring the young students. So we had an opportunity to kind of experience that firsthand. And then there was the Air Force Junior ROTC program. So JROTC, but Air Force Junior ROTC. So that kind of steered me into the air direction. And again, I was at an aviation high school where I learned how to fly. So there was an aviation specialty there. And we usually call that ACE, Aviation Career Education. So we had the opportunity to work with airplanes, be around them. And so that kind of inspired me. That kind of led me in the Air Force direction. Not to mention, I was on the drill team back then, and we were the #1 school, and we used to beat the pants off all the Army ROTC schools. Sorry, guys, but I have to brag a little bit. We really did. And there used to be a Navy ROTC, Junior ROTC program at a high school by the name of Murray Wright High School. I don't think there anymore. But so in the Detroit area, there was a couple Air Force schools, Army ROTC, Navy Junior ROTC, and there was a Marine Corps Junior ROTC program at River Rouge High School. And we all spent time competing against each other with drill competition. So that's what got me here today, was Junior ROTC. So to answer your question, when I was younger, I thought about the Army. I've always had love for the Army, still do. Helicopters, I love them. But I kind of was geared toward the air just kind of from my exposure.
That's really interesting and intriguing. Thank you for that. My second question is, do you work closely with people who are non-binary or gender non-conforming? And I'll explain if you don't necessarily know what either of those are. And if so, do you feel as though they're discriminated because of it? And if not, do you feel that it's important for the military to make a safe space for them?
Yeah, so please go ahead and just give me just an explanation. I think it'll benefit the listeners.
Well, non-binary or gender non-conforming individuals, they're often like, some identify as trans and others don't, but it's more so of they don't feel that they fit within either like the gender binary where it's just man and woman or whatever, or they feel like in between it. Some feel like part of both or just outside of it in general.
Okay. I work closely with, I work with airmen, and airmen, you wear this uniform. I respect that uniform and who you are as a person. Regardless of your preference, regardless of how you identify, you are a person, you are serving our nation, you are performing a mission. And I appreciate that. I think where we have issues. So as you were talking, the things that come in my brain initially is diversity and inclusion. It's important. It's essential. And if you pay attention to where we are in society today, and what's going on in the media and all of that, it's challenged. And it's up to us as leaders to ensure that we understand what it means and embrace it and promote it and teach it. We all have unconscious biases. You have to understand that regardless of where you come from, and the ways to kind of to get through those is to get to know someone. You learn more about them. You learn more that you understand that you guys may have a lot more in common than you think. So there are ways that we have an obligation to ensure that we are being inclusive and ensuring that everybody is treated fairly, equally, and that we respect everyone, depending, regardless of their, preference or how they identify, all of that. So me personally, I don't necessarily, I just try to treat all my airmen the way I want to be treated, with respect, dignity, love, compassion. We have our motto here at the 191st Aircraft Maintenance Squadron. We lead with wisdom, courage, and compassion. And that's how we approach things. The Air Force, our core values are integrity first, service before self, excellence in all we do, and that's kind of how we approach our task. Regardless of how they identify, I depend on those airmen to keep me safe and my family safe and my loved ones safe, and I in turn do the same for them. That's my obligation.
Thank you. That was truly enlightening, honestly. And my final question is, what are your specific duties concerning like the maintenance of aircrafts, and what do you feel is like the most difficult aspect of maintaining them, and why?
So my specific duties entail, pretty much leading a squadron. So we have a mission to do. So mission first, we always focus on our mission. Our mission is to make sure that we have mission-ready aircraft for our various higher headquarters tasking, training our air crew to ensure that they can go out and perform their wartime missions. We have state partnerships, things of that nature. So our job primarily is to we provide inspections on the aircraft. We provide scheduled maintenance on the aircraft. When the aircraft has malfunctions, they're machines, and machines break. When they break, our crew chiefs are skilled to provide that maintenance. They fix the aircraft. Things that I manage is I manage our manning document to ensure that we have enough members available and mission ready to ensure that the mission is accomplished. We have an obligation to ensure that our airmen are well physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. So as the commander, I'm responsible for things, morale events, ensuring that they, physical fitness, how airmen are evaluated, all of that, making sure that our evaluations take place, medical readiness, all of that. This is a family. So if there are things in the airman's private life that could affect their performance here on the job, we do our best to support that and see how to assist in that. So a commander, I would say, is more like they're a mentor to the airmen. It's just kind of the catch-all. It's just like you pretty much have an obligation to ensure that those airmen that perform the mission are able to have the needs, they have the tools, You have to train, equip them, make sure they have the right equipment, the tools, the training, and the resources to get the job done. So I know that's kind of a long answer, but that's directly how I contribute to the maintenance operation. And then I think there was a second part to your question.
It was
about
what
maintenance
is
specifically.
it was what is the most difficult aspect of maintaining the aircrafts?
That's a tough question. I think that is that varies. There's just it's situational.
Mhm.
It depends on what you have going on at the time. Sometimes resources are limited. Whether that be personnel or equipment. Sometimes you're in a high stress environment, so operation tempo can kind of change the dynamics of maintenance. If we've got a lot of tasks that we need to keep up with. So I would say it's situation dependent. Fully, we have regulations that we follow. We have technical orders that we follow. That some of it is most of their guidelines, but most of it, almost all of it, is regulatory guidance. Said you will do this step, that step, this step. So it helps us to ensure that we're staying on task and we're not missing steps. So I would just say it varies. One day the biggest challenge may be the weather.
Mhm.
We may have weather where it limits our ability to perform the mission. The next day may be we have so many missions that we need to accomplish and we only have half the people. So it varies.
Well, thank you for that. And also, when you started discussing guidelines and regulations, I started to think of OSHA, and my OSHA specifically. You know how they have like job guidelines and safety precautions. Right. But thank you for that, and that was all my questions.
Thank you, Cadet Sergeant First Class.
Thank you, Cadet Sergeant First Class Bradley. And finally, he will be followed by Cadet Colonel Serenity Crenshaw.
Good afternoon. I'm Cadet Colonel Serenity Crenshaw. I serve as the Corps Commander for the Detroit Public Schools Community District, and I also serve as the Battalion Commander at Cass Technical High School's Renegade Battalion. Good afternoon. I have 3 questions today, and my first one is regarding basic training because I have recently enlisted in the National Guard. So what was the most physically and mentally demanding aspect of basic training and why? And how did you overcome it?
So congratulations, Cadet Colonel. I think you're making an awesome decision. I know you got a awesome career ahead of you. You're gonna love every moment of those experiences. So you definitely got to hang in there and, like you said, eat that elephant one bite at a time. Basic training. So as I mentioned, I was hired. I say I was hired. I joined the Michigan Air National Guard to go fly airplanes, to be an officer and fly airplanes, which is, to be an officer, 4-year degree, AFO, Air Force Officers Qualifying Test, or Officers Qualifying Test is kind of like a, SAT, ACT similar exam. So I didn't go to basic training. So as an enlisted, most enlisted airmen or enlisted personnel, you go to basic training, BMT, basic military training. I went to, at the time it was called AMS, Academy of Military Science, and it's pretty much basic training for officers. Well, when you go there, similarly, they teach you how to make a bed, using with the hospital corners, customs and courtesies. You learn how to march, how to salute, how to wear your uniform, how to, all of those things. But an officer training school, they'll say, here's your manual. It needs to look like this. They won't actually demonstrate a lot of the things for you. You as a leader need to figure out how to do it yourself. So they'll say, we want it to look like this. They'll come back and it needs to look like that. They'll still come in super early in the morning and with the garbage can and wake up and all of that. So you'll still have that kind of that shock factor, where you eat, you have to eat fast, you have to think on your feet, and it's a situation where they'll put you in some stressful situations so that you can learn how to adapt and overcome and follow directions, military bearing, all of that. So let me just share something with you. You're in JROTC and a cadet colonel. So when you attend basic military education, you already know how to march. You already know how to wear the uniform. You probably I don't know if you put hospital corners on your bed when you make them at home. I know I still do, but you may or may need to learn how to fold the shirt a certain way. But when it comes to customs and courtesies, you already know the rank structure. So you're going to be, I'm telling you, you're going to be ahead of the game. That's just like when I got there, I couldn't wait for it was my turn to march the flight around, because I knew how to march, column left, column right, everything, you name it. Left flank, right flank, obliques. To this day, I think I can march. I still feel like I can march on a postage stamp, and I learned that from junior ROTC. So, there's going to be some things that will be challenging. You'll miss home, all of that, those natural things that will occur. But the fact that you have this background and these years of being in the AFJ or junior Air or Army junior ROTC program, that's going to just serve you well at basic training.
Thank you so much. My second question is, how do your personal relationships outside of the military differ from your professional relationships inside of the military?
That is a huge question. And I'm going to answer this question like this. And when I answer this question, I'm specifically talking to you all. And coming from where you are. So here's the thing. In aviation, there's a saying called temperature lapse rate. The higher you get, the temperature decreases. So it gets colder. The higher you get, it gets colder. And how I would equate that to professional relationships versus personal relationships, there may be, and it may not be, there may be times where the more you grow, some of those who we have grew up with, been encountered with, that we were and are friends with and things like that, the more it there'll be that altitude separation that'll take place. And then there's only one or two things that can happen. Sometimes, and I'm careful when I say this, but either you're going to bring those to your level or they'll bring you down to their level. So I had to, there were situations that I would be in young in the neighborhood where I grew up. I don't know if you're familiar, I grew up around Finkel and Southfield Freeway on a street called Archdale. That's where I'm from. And there were times where, I would be, now this is after I've commissioned, I'm in the military, I would be in situations where I would have to think to myself, you know what, I shouldn't be here because anything could happen and I got too much to lose. So I have to remove myself from situations. So not to say that I don't care or didn't care about, those individuals that I grew up with growing up. But there are certain things that, as an officer, as a military member, you cannot be associated with. That's just part of life. And I would say that's probably the same for some civilian occupations. You know, you get to a certain point where you got to be around like-minded people who help you grow, who you can help grow. You know, you got to be able to bounce ideas off one another as it pertains to life and, you know, a lot of stuff, family, finances, budgets, managing a budget, you know, just the personal budget, so many different things. So now I would say my professional life and my personal life is close. I don't really, I don't necessarily hang out with people that I work with that much. Um, but I do have a group of friends and family that I do hang out with that are like-minded, if that makes any sense. I hang out with people who kind of think about things that will help us get to a better place, a higher altitude. So I would say in that professionally and personally, it's kind of the same, but I don't necessarily mix. I don't spend a lot of time hanging out with people that I work with unless it's at a work function.
Thank you so much. And my final question is, what did you learn about yourself while your time serving in the military that you didn't know before you served?
Wow, yeah, that's good. You know, that's a really good question. What did I learn about myself? Um, I learned how to show restraint. I learned that I needed to show restraint. Um, I learned that I had a fear of public speaking. I kind of knew it, but I didn't really have to, you know, to speak out much, you know, growing up. Um, I learned that in most situations that I'm in, I'm the only one in the room that looks like me. And so each time I walk into a room, I have to deal with that. And I have to walk in that room with my head held high and be confident in who I am and who God called me to be and my and who, you know, I just got to be confident in why I'm where I am. Because sometimes it can be intimidating. But I would say more often than not, I mean, almost always, pretty much every day, just pretty much every day. When I walk in the rooms, there may be one or two or three or four, you know, a few people in the room that look like me. But you kind of got to be confident in knowing that, and don't let that cause you to feel, you know, have lower self-esteem or inferior or cause you to feel anxiety. You got to just power through that. Especially when you walk into the room, I learned that I would have to endure that feeling walking into a room for the first time, like my first day of pilot training. When I walk into the room and I look around, and then I'm the only person that looks like me, and I'm in the guard. You know, so you will have that as well when you advance in your career or you in the military and you're the guardsman. So now you're speaking for the guard when you're in a total force with the total force integration. So there, I learned that, you know, just being able to confidence. I think that's really one of the things I had to grow and learn um, about myself. Um, you know, positive. I don't know. I was just. It's just a blessing to be able to help others. So I've always felt that I had that ability. But yeah, I would just say the confidence thing is in being able to understand that you know you got to be able to dig in and proceed on regardless of who else is in the room.
Well, thank you very much for answering my questions, and that concludes them.
Well, thank you, Cadet Colonel.
Yes, thank you, Cadet Colonel Crenshaw. And before we conclude this meeting, I would like to thank you on behalf of the Detroit Public Schools Community District and the Cadet Corps for joining us and taking time out of your day to allow us to interview you. And just before we conclude, could you give us any closing remarks or any final words that you would like to say?
Yes, man, this is huge. I mean, I'm honored. I'm completely honored. I'm so proud of you all. I mean, you have no idea. You are kings and queens. Your future's so bright. The lives that you will affect, you have no idea of the impact that you will have on others around you, with what you do in your life. So please don't take that for granted. You guys are the leaders of our great nation. When I retire, I'm going to be depending on you to take us to that next level.